Today's video is something of a viewer request. Today's video was mentioned by commenter at Michael Gorman 2662, who commented on our School of Boredom lesson number 201, Saturday Morning Cartoons. He says, Freakazoid, Tiny Toon Adventures, and Animaniacs. Well, Michael Gorman 2662, I have heard you down here in the depths of the lab, so I immediately set to work, and without further ado, here's today's video, Tiny Toon Adventures. They're tiny, they're toony, they're all a little loony, and through this video they're invading your YouTube. However, these are not the baby Looney Tunes, nor are they the children of the original Looney Tunes. These were a whole new batch of tunes, a new generation. And today's topic is all about their show that was about the trials of growing up and dealing with cartoon life problems. I told you I was going to hashtag that. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Macabre Gorham Labs presents School of Boredom, a showcase of things likely forgotten. My name is Bats, and I'll be your guide today for lesson number 207, The Lineage of Tiny Toon Adventures, not Baby Looney Tunes.
We're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony, and in this cartoony we're invading your TV.
Today's story starts on January 20th, 1987, where none other than Steven Spielberg would be approached by Warner Brothers executives to work on resurrecting some old properties by working through some ideas together. Now, most of you know I am not a fan of reboots or remakes. However, if you are going to do that, this is how it needs to be done. And why does this work? Because according to the show's wiki, they eventually decided that the new characters would be similar to the Looney Tunes characters with no direct relation. In fact, there is a quote from Tiny Toon Adventures creator and producer Tom Ruegger that says, "Well, I think in Warner Brothers' case, they had the opportunity to work with Steven Spielberg on a project, but he didn't want to just go to work on characters that Chuck Jones, Friz Freleng, Bob McKimson, and Bob Clampett made famous and created. He wanted to be involved with the creation of some new characters." Something I did not mention, though, is that when they landed on rebooting Looney Tunes, it was not originally planned as a series, but instead was designed as a theatrical release, as in a feature film. The change from movie to series came when they decided to design it to, quote, reach a broader audience. It was on December 27th, 1988 that the project would be transformed into an animated series and quickly put into production, after being slated for the first 65 episodes. On September 14th, 1990, we would finally get the first of 98 total episodes when primetime CBS would air the series pilot, A Looney Beginning, as a special broadcast. This would be the landmark first animated series that Amblin Entertainment would create in partnership with Warner Brothers, with Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, and Freakazoid coming later down the line. The pilot episode starts with a pan-over shot of Hollywood, California, and the classic Looney Tunes stars in sort of a where are they now situation. This is where we land on Bugs Bunny shamelessly living his lavish life and blatantly telling the audience that he was paid to introduce the episode. He begins reminiscing on what happened when Bugs went to Warner to inspire the cartoonist to create Tiny Toons in a somewhat meta reference to the show's creation. After a series of comedic, artistic attempts similar to the one seen in the Looney Tunes classic short Duck-Amuck, the artist finally lands on creating Buster Bunny. And just in case you're curious, this was Duck-Amuck.
Some color, stupid! Hey! Not me, you slop artist!
The sassy cartoon bunny suddenly comes to life and proceeds to tell the artist how to complete his creation. You know, as most artistic creations do. I'm sure most of my fellow artists out there understand that we don't create the art, we just bring it to life. It tells us who and what it is. So after some more design hijinks, Buster is completed. However, he asks the artist to create for him a best friend. After doing so, Buster comments,
A girl?
Naturally, to which she responds,
Welcome to the 90s.
Huh?
It's about this time that we realize these aren't our parents' Looney Tunes. These were different. I'll just let them show you. The artist then names both of the characters and comes to the conclusion that they will not work out for Warner Brothers, so he crumples up the design and tosses it in the waste bin. Frustrated and tired, the artist calls it a day, and soon as he leaves, Buster and Babs Bunny, no relation, remove themselves from the crumpled paper and decide that they will make the new cartoon, and they will make it for everyone who loves tunes. During this time, they even take some shots at the network.
But Buster, it takes dozens of highly paid network executives years to come up with a TV show.
Which means it should take us about as long as this next commercial break.
The duo then hold auditions, and this is where we meet the cast of the show, as well as a couple of the rejects. These characters were less like the original counterparts and more like their own entities. Altogether, it was the same, but also vastly different. As the auditions go on, each of the characters is assigned to their respective areas among Acme Acres. Now, based on what you just witnessed, you could probably assume that these are the children of the classic Looney Tunes characters, but the answer to that one is no, they're not. They then decide they need villains for the show. And how these characters are not related, I will never know, but we'll discuss that a little more during the next section. So next, it was on to scripts. And soon after that, the villain Montana Max tries to take over in a scene that I can only assume inspired the video game Epic Mickey. This is when Bugs decides to announce himself to Babs and Buster, and they plead with him to help with the Montana Max situation. Bugs inform them that they can learn all there is to know about being a toon at the Acme Looniversity, where the audience is shown that the original Looney Tunes have become instructors in their respective fields. From classes like Wild Takes and Fudology to anvil dropping, spotlight stealing, and exploding cakes, not to mention villain whooping, this school was your one-stop shop to learn all things toon. This show was so self-aware, they probably knew that I was gonna make a YouTube video about it. So after putting their new skills to the test, the bunny duo get the scripts back and save the day, just in time to give the cartoon to the network and give credit to the animator. This episode segment wraps up with Buster and Babs asking for a credit in the show, to which the animator replies no, and then, like most things artists create, they straight up attack him. This show was edgy, often violent as hell, and we loved it. So basically, the short version of the premise moving forward with this show was these Tiny Toons live and attend school in Acme Acres where they're supposed to learn how to and become the next generation of Looney Tunes. They would do this by learning from the masters, learning life lessons, and experiencing the real tropes of growing up and other cartoon life problems. One thing I will say about this show is it most certainly did not shy away from serious issues, with episodes that handled topics like the ones on screen with tobacco use, violence, alcohol, fear, and even death itself. This show knew how it wanted to represent these things, and in some cases, that was by being directly in your face. While each of the characters from this show would make a pretty interesting character study, we have neither the time nor resources for that. But I can tell you who they were and what they were about. And let me tell you, this show had an all-star cast of voice actors. First up on the list, we have Buster Bunny, voiced by one of my favorite voice actors of all time, Charlie Adler. Buster Bunny was Tiny Toons' answer to Bugs Bunny. Well, half of him anyway. Buster was designed with blue and white fur and a red shirt. In the context of the show, it is basically established that Buster is the de facto leader of the cast of, quote, good guys. He's more often than not responsible for addressing the audience, presenting the episode's premise, and making the young audience feel involved with the episode. Buster is the one that other characters go to when they have a problem, and he usually has a solution. But he very much does give off the feel of a young but modern to the 1990s Bugs Bunny. It's also worth noting that according to IMDb, John Kassir voiced Buster Bunny for 4 of those episodes. Next up, let's talk about Barbara Ann Babs Bunny, best friend to Buster Bunny.
No relation.
Voiced by the legendary Tress MacNeille, Barbara Ann, or Babs Bunny, was the other half of the answer to Bugs Bunny. But she was also a manic, energetic, and slightly insane bunny with a penchant for impersonations and improv. Babs is most often seen alongside Buster, hosting the episodes. She has a quick wit that can sometimes get her into trouble, and if I had to describe Babs in 2 words, they would be walking parody. Throughout the run of the show, Bab impersonates a ton of then-relevant characters and celebrities. Designed with pink fur and a yellow shirt with a purple skirt and bows in her ears, Babs was a super fun and energetic character that many fans of the show fondly remember. Some more than others. If it gets requested, I could try to make a video about every single time Babs impersonated someone. But for now, next up we have Plucky Duck. Voiced by Joe Alasky, Plucky Duck is, well, he's a smaller version of Daffy Duck. He's often seen being very selfish or jealous. Plucky is also a bad liar with an ego bigger than almost any other character. Plucky can be seen trying to steal attention away from other characters, and he does this by often unintentionally causing large problems, sort of like Rube Goldberg effects that really only work out badly for him. Plucky is seen wearing a white tank top and has green feathers. And there was even a second version of Plucky that was portrayed as a baby. Personally, I think these were some of my least favorite segments of Tiny Toons, but Baby Plucky was voiced by Nate Ruger. Next up on the list, we have Hampton J. Pig. Hampton was the Tiny Toons answer to Porky Pig. He's also kind of timid and very friendly. Hampton was brought to life by Don Messick, the original voice for none other than the first Scooby-Doo. He has a love of food and is often seen alongside Plucky Duck and being heavily involved with his antics. Hampton is designed to be pretty much a small Porky, except he wears blue overalls and is very easily scared and more often than not is therefore comedy relief. Next up on the list we have Elmyra Duff. This was the show's answer to Elmer Fudd. Voiced by the amazing Cree Summer, Elmyra really wanted a pet. I mean really wanted a pet.
No matter what the cost.
Elmyra's plots on the show would almost all revolve around her trying to abscond with one of the Animal Toons. She came across as sort of like a cross between the Abominable Snowman and Elmer Fudd. During the majority of the episodes that featured her, it was well known that if you were an Animal Toon, you need to run and hide from Elmyra. She can be seen wearing a child's dress and has a bow in her hair. Wait. Is that a... What is that? Is that a skull? Why? Where did it come from? I think I have a theory. Elmyra also proclaims to be the girlfriend of Montana Max, whom happens to be next on our list. Montana Max is voiced by MGL favorite Danny Cooksey, and he would be the show's answer to Yosemite Sam. Very selfish, egocentrical, hot-tempered, and stinking rich, Montana was one of the show's villains. If I had to describe this character, I would say he's a spoiled, green-eyed monster with the spirit of a red-eyed demon. Complete with an unfiltered hatred for Buster, or more accurately, rabbits in general, this character was not afraid to use his wealth to get his way. From wrecking the day's episode to attempting to ruin the lives of the Toons, Montana Max was a villain through and through. Next up, we have Dizzy Devil. Tiny Toons' answer to the Tasmanian Devil, or Taz as he is more commonly known, was voiced by another legend, Maurice LaMarche. Man, this show really did have an all-star cast. Dizzy was a young, purple Tasmanian devil mentored by none other than Taz himself. This character is insane, fast, dangerous, and will eat darn near anything, and speaks in a childlike, almost infantile manner. He is able to spin himself into a mini tornado, and was an eccentric bit of fun. Dizzy also wears a propeller beanie and has heterochromia in his eyes, which was used to help accentuate his craziness. And in case anybody out there is curious, per Google, heterochromia is the presence of different colored eyes in the same person. Heterochromia in humans appears as either a hereditary trait unassociated with other disease, as a symptom of various syndromes, or as the result of trauma. On a lighter note, then we had Shirley the Loon. Seriously, she's so light she floats. Unlike other characters in this show, Shirley was one of the few that was not inspired by an original Looney Tune, although it is implied that she most closely resembles Melissa Duck. Shirley the Loon McLoon, voiced by Gail Mathis, was a white duck with big blonde hair, a thick Valley Girl accent with a red or pink shirt and a bow in her hair. Shirley is often seen floating around and meditating, as she is really in tune with her spirituality. Highly intelligent and quick to flare up her temper when necessary, Shirley's name is derived from fellow New Age aficionado Shirley MacLaine, and inspired by her voice actor's Saturday Night Live character, Vicky the Valley Girl. Next up on our list we have Furball. Spelled with 2 R's, Furball was the Tiny Toons counterpart to none other than Sylvester the Cat. In fact, it is said that Sylvester is Furball's favorite teacher. This poor character resides in a cardboard box in a dark alley, constantly finding himself the pet of the absolutely bonkers Elmira, a fate he does not wish for, seeing as she is crazy and dangerous. All this little guy wanted to find was a loving home and a good meal. His segments were often sort of sad or depressing, with him realizing that what little he had was enough for him and having more could in fact be worse. Even though he didn't traditionally speak, Furball was voiced by Frank Welker. Next week... Oh, you know what? It's our next entry. Next up, Fifi LaFume. Fifi was voiced by animation voice superstar Kath Soucie, and was Tiny Toons' direct response to the controversial Looney Tune, Pepe Le Pew. It's about this time in the video I have to point out that Fifi pretty much got the same treatment that Babs got, as she was also something of a fan favorite. As an artist, I appreciate cool and amazing art, especially with this much talent. But isn't this just a little weird? I mean, yes, they are cartoons, but aren't they also supposed to be children? I mean, as an artist myself, I get it. And to be fair, I have drawn several similar pieces in the past. But some of the things I found while writing this script, I simply cannot show you. For obvious reasons. However, that being said, we are going to skip over the obvious tropes of Fifi and why this character was problematic, as it is well known and we do not discuss topics like that here. So Fifi was a purple and white skunk with a bow in her hair, which was always falling into her face. Her tail was nearly 2 times the size of her body, which was almost as much of a character as she was. She used her tail sort of like a multi-tool. Fifi spoke in a French accent and was seen more often than not looking for love in all the wrong places. There were a whole bunch of other characters that would premiere during the run of this show, but they weren't featured in more than a handful of episodes, so... Spitfire Round! Granny, voiced by June Foray. Little Sneezer, voiced by Kath Soucie. Sweetie, voiced by Candy Milo. Go-Go Waxton the Dodo, voiced by Frank Welker. Arnold the Pitbull, voiced by Rob Paulson. And finally, Baby Plucky, voiced by Nate Ruger. Now I know I left a bunch of characters out, so feel free to let me know who you think I should have included down in the comments section below. Tiny Toon Adventures was not just a coming-of-age series for the toons that were featured, but it was a coming-of-age story for those that grew up watching the originals and the changing times. As adults, we need to learn how to pass the torch instead of coveting it. With the show being broke down into smaller segments, Tiny Toon Adventures was a lot of fun, sometimes disturbing, and always wacky. But it didn't stop at just the cartoon, because with the success Tiny Toons had, you knew it had a slew of merchandise, most of which will be talked about later on in different videos. But for now, let's go through some of the basics. There were home video releases. In fact, there were 9 VHS releases, 5 DVD releases, and 1 Laserdisc release. As of 2024, on March 11th, 1992, they gave us the VHS and Laserdisc releases for How I Spent My Summer Vacation. I'm not going to go into the plot here, as we will be discussing it in depth later on, but this was also the aforementioned Laserdisc release as well. And coming soon, I do have a special on the Tiny Toons Music Television VHS tape, because I had this one when I was a kid and just recently scored a copy of it on eBay. Then flash forward all the way to July 29th, 2008, and they would release Tiny Toon Adventures Season 1, Volume 1, a 4-disc set. Almost an entire year later, they would release Season 1, Volume 2 on April 21st, 2009. It wouldn't be until 2013 that the last 2 volumes would come out, with Volume 3, Tiny Toons Crazy Crew Rescues, releasing on January 8th, 2013, and Volume 4, Tiny Toons Looney Links, releasing on May 28th, 2013. And How I Spent My Summer Vacation would get a DVD release as well on August 21st, 2012. You can find the DVDs and VHS copies all around the internet if you just look for them, and they vary in price depending on what you want. I think the Tiny Toons Music Television VHS cost me around $20 US with free shipping. But it didn't stop there. There was more. Of course, with something this popular, there were video games as well. And again, most of these will be featured later on, so we're just going to mention them by name here. In chronological order, Tiny Toons Adventures for 1991, released on the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Nintendo Game Boy. Tiny Toon Adventures Cartoon Workshop in 1992 for the NES. Tiny Toon Adventures 2 Adventures in Wacky Land in 1992 for the NES. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Busts Loose on the Super Nintendo in 1992. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure for the Sega Genesis in 1993. Tiny Toon Adventures 2 Montana's Movie Madness for the Nintendo Game Boy in 1993. Tiny Toon Adventures Wacky Sports Challenge for both the Super Nintendo and Game Boy. Tiny Toon Adventures Acme All-Stars in 1994 for the Sega Genesis. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster and the Beanstalk for PC in 1996 and later the Sony PlayStation in 1998. Tiny Toon Adventures Toonenstein for the PlayStation in 1999. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Saves the Day for the Nintendo Game Boy in 2001. Tiny Toon Adventures Plucky's Big Adventure in 2001 for the PlayStation. Tiny Toon Adventures Dizzy's Candy Quest for the Game Boy Color in 2001. Tiny Toon Adventures Wacky Stackers for the Nintendo Game Boy Advance in 2001. And Tiny Toon Adventures Bad Dream for the Game Boy Advance in 2002. There were books, too. Aside from coloring books, here in the United States, we got the Tiny Toons magazine made by DC Comics, and over in the UK, they actually had a full-on Tiny Toons comic book produced by Marvel Comics. You can find both over on eBay at varying prices, along with most of the games. And yes, believe it or not, there was even an album for this property. Tiny Toons Sing would feature 10 songs performed by the titular Toons. However, I cannot find a physical copy of it anywhere, so I will have more on this one as I uncover the facts. From fast food to toy stores, this property had merch. Too much to mention here, as this video has already gotten pretty long. But here's a Google search for, quote, Tiny Toon Adventures Toys. And finally, they even had a breakfast cereal, Tiny Toon Adventure Cereal, made by Quaker Oats in 1990. But where are the tunes now? Well, aside from streaming, it has gotten the dreaded reboot treatment. Again, make something new. But I digress. Let's talk about it quickly, because I will not be covering this one later. As of 2024, they have Tiny Toons Looniversity. It's a freaking reboot. I do not know what else to say. From what I understand, it's a bland copy of its much better counterpart, recycling jokes and plot lines. And you can find pretty much all of it on many streaming services and digital storefronts. I really enjoyed the original series, and actually have quite a soft spot in my heart for this particular home video. I owned a copy of this as a kid, but unfortunately I lost it due to a tragic series of events that I will discuss over on my partner channel. Anyway, this show was a lot of fun, and you already know what I thought, so now you know, I've just gotta ask. Do you have a favorite Tiny Toons character? Do you have a favorite Looney Tunes character? What was one of your favorite Tiny Toon Adventure moments? Have any comments or fun facts? Maybe I forgot something, or maybe you just have a suggestion for a future video, or want to pop in and say hi. Either way, I look forward to hearing from you. And unfortunately with that, we've ran out of time for this School of Boredom lesson. I've been your guide, Bats, and today we talked about Lesson 207, the lineage of Tiny Toon Adventures, not Baby Looney Tunes. Be sure to check back next time, because you never know what we have in store. And as usual, think for yourselves, be excellent to each other, and of course, keep it creepy. And I know some of you are thinking I didn't mention the episode One Beer. Don't worry, it's coming. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you enjoyed this one and would like to see more of our weird, creepy, odd, eccentric, or strange content as soon as it comes out, please feel free to click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more. We'll see you later. Keep it creepy.